Talk. Talk. Talk to me Tuesday.
Hey there, welcome to Talk to Me Tuesday on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Madi B, and today I have very special guests. I have two guests with me, Joe and Hilary, so welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to get into a little bit more details in exactly why you guys are here, who you're representing, and the organization as well. But today we have a very special show. We're speaking about a very special topic that we want to bring awareness to you guys that are watching. If you recognize any of these things, and that topic is human trafficking. It's something very serious and very present in our community, and so we want to go ahead and share some of these red flags or indicators so that you guys can also help those that might be suffering and survive the human trafficking. So human trafficking is the action of practice of illegally transporting people from one area to another, typically for the purposes of forced labor or sexual exploitation. So today I want to open up those lines of communication. If you guys, viewers, family members, friends, parents, have any questions or comments in regards to this topic, we do have two awesome representatives today that we're going to go ahead and introduce. So I have Joe Madison here representing Love People Not Pixels, and we have Hilary Sherrer representing The Landing. So guys, I'm so excited to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, you guys are going to bring so much light to the show, and maybe an hour is not enough, but we're going to definitely try. But tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you guys are from, and what exactly does your organization stand for?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Joe Madison. My hometown is Pearland, Texas. I left my career about 3 years ago to fight human trafficking full time. We started volunteering and then just saw that there was just a bigger need. And when there was an opportunity to get involved, we did. And we started to learn that there are other organizations in the city that are doing great things. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there's really not enough men that are involved. That is a great need that we have. And more specifically, what are we doing about demand? Something that we'll talk about later. And so that just called to me, and I really felt called to step in, get busy, get to work, and see where it took me.
Yeah, awesome. We're going to talk a little bit more about Love People Not Pixels here in a second. Hilary, tell us a little bit about your organization, The Landing, and what you guys stand for.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Hilary Sherrer, and I'm the communications manager at The Landing. We operate a daytime drop-in center down in southwest Houston off of Bissonnet between 59 and the Beltway. And we're open from 10 to 4 for any survivor to come in and just hang out, to receive services, to get connected to the things that they might need during that time. And so that's a little bit about what I get to do. I moved here about 5 years ago from Arkansas, but love Texas, and the Lord really brought me to this place because I had no idea about human trafficking beforehand. But when you're in it, you keep learning every single day. And now that I see it and I see the need and I see that it's everywhere, I know that I can't not do anything. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really feel the passion here. So we're going to talk a little bit more on where this passion comes from and the stuff that you guys have seen, learned, and how we can help others. So Joe, your position is the executive director. So talk to us about your role and how you've impacted lives within your role.
Yeah, so Love People Not Pixels, our goal is to fight human trafficking by focusing on demand. Love People organization purpose. So being birthed out of struggle and this sort of really conflict, and then freedom and restoration, and then opening it up to start that's something that we take very seriously. We realize that people come from different places, And in that, we, in a non-judgmental and a full empathy way, we look at how can we partner with this person to begin their road to freedom and restoration. And we follow that principle by answering one of two questions. Why would someone want to buy another human being? And why is it so easy in our culture to do so? Those are our guiding principle questions. And everything that we do, all the programs that we do, the men that we focus on, the parents that we invest in, the young people that we train, are focused around those two questions.
Wow, so your program offers a lot, not just on the educational, but you also help on the counseling. Is there any other services that your program offers? I just kind of named two very briefly.
Yeah. So we look at our services almost like a timeline. You know, in this life of human trafficking, it doesn't just happen one day. There's something in a life that began that process, whether it's the average time that someone's exposed to pornography of 9 years old, which is a statistic, and that's probably the worst part of that sentence is not 9 years old, it's the word average. That means there's some younger people. So we need to educate early on. So we do that. We talk to people at the age of 18, 19 years old when one of two things happen. The boy becomes a man in the world because he's 18, goes to college, maybe goes to his first strip club, and girls are aging out of government assistance and things so now they're kind of on their own. So we talk to people at these crucial points, and we talk about training. And then we talk to those that are in the teeth of it, buyers, people that are either at the point of arrest, which we're actually working with an operation right now with Houston Police Department.
Wow.
At the point of arrest, we're talking to men, they're in handcuffs, and they are at a point in their life where it's all gone very wrong. And we talk to them about, do you want to ever wear those cuffs again? What's next for you? Do you want to talk with somebody about what that might look like? And so that's another point. And then one of the other points that we do is we get with guys that have already been arrested. They've gone through the process. They've been prosecuted. They've taken the guilty plea. We sit down with them and talk to them about how did you get here? Not just the arrest, but what led up to that. And then we work on partnering them with a defender or someone that's an accountability partner for them.
Wow, that's impactful. And we're going to talk a little bit more. You said a lot there that I had more questions. But as I went on your website, I also saw that you guys have something unique called STAR.
Yeah.
And if you want to kind of explain, first of all, what that acronym stands for, but what is this program? Tell us a little bit about that program.
Definitely. So STAR, the acronym stands for Sex Buyers, Transformation, and Restoration. This program is born out of something that we need more and more of, and that's collaboration between nonprofits, law enforcement, DA's office, judges. So Montgomery County took a hard look at what happens when somebody's arrested in this process. Do they get a small fine and a misdemeanor charge? And what they decided was, no, that's not how we're going to fight trafficking. We've got to confront this. And we wanted to come alongside them and partner with them. So we partnered on this program called the STAR program. The STAR program is a program that, while it's not a diversionary program. If you've ever heard of those, that's where somebody might go to a program and get their charges dropped and have sort of an informational thing. This is really more of, you've been found guilty and you've been convicted. You pay the fine. This is an opportunity to avoid jail time, to come in and really learn about where your decision making, your actions fall on this spectrum of human trafficking. And more than that, how to get from what you did to what you do next, who you are. How do you make a decision at this point to say, this is not who I am, this is something that I did, and I want to be better. And that is at the key of disrupting this human trafficking cycle.
Wow. So it is a cycle. We're going to talk a little bit about what that cycle looks like, because I think that's very important. But before going into that, Hilary, your role as a communications manager in the organization, The Landing. And I want you to talk a little bit about what your role is and more depth, The Landing, and what services you guys offer.
Sure, yeah. So my role as communications manager, I do all of our marketing, all of our presentations in the community to start to bring awareness and to start to discuss about what this looks like in our city and how people can get involved and help. I also do all of our volunteer coordination, so if you want to volunteer with us, you get to work with me. Lucky you.
Lucky you. That's right.
And then, as far as our organization, it was birthed out of a gap that our co-founders saw. So our executive director, Natasha Paradeschi, and a couple who are also our co-founders, Deborah and James Gates, they were working in Houston with survivors of human trafficking, and they saw that many times what it takes for a survivor to cross the barrier, cross the divide, and actually get help is just too much. And that here in our city, we want to make that divide smaller, pull down the barriers that it might take a survivor to get help. And so that's how they decided, hey, this drop-in center model, it's right in the heart of the biggest hotspot in our city where prostitution and human trafficking is happening. Let's go right there to where survivors are at. And let's try to meet them where they're at and help them get to where they want to be, instead of requiring someone to call a shelter and say, I want to come to you. Let's go to them and meet them there. So that's what we're doing. We're there, we offer services and programs, and we really want to just build relationships, because at the end of the day, if someone doesn't feel worthy or like they have purpose in their life, they can go through all the services on the face of the planet. But if they don't feel like they mean something and they don't feel loved, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
So.
and I know the landing helps all kinds of genders and ages. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we don't want to, if you guys are needing help, it's not just females. We're just going to say, I love the word survivor, because they have survived something that either they think is normal, but they were exploited. So I think that's something something to take seriously as well. I know we work a lot also with sexual assault, sexual abuse, and you said it. A lot of them think it's their fault, or they don't think that there is something wrong with the situation or the society. So do you guys help guide the survivors into their story and having a voice?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a statistic that says less than 2% of survivors are even identified, less than 2% of victims. And so the first thing that we see is, let's help identify and let's help self-identify, so that victims who are survivors know that what happened to them, what they went through, was wrong, and then it wasn't their fault, just like you mentioned. And so that's our first goal that we're trying to help with. And so when someone comes into our center to get services, we don't ask them, hey, are you a victim of human trafficking? Because many people don't even know what that means. What we just ask is if you've ever exchanged anything of value. So it's not just money. It's a ride, it's food, it's shelter, it's drugs, it's anything of value to them for a sexual service, then you're welcome. And so that's what we're trying to, again, break down that barrier of making survivors know exactly what has happened to them, or have that vocabulary to define human trafficking.
That's very deep and that's very broad, and we're going to talk a little bit, like I mentioned, the process. What does a survivor look like? What is a buyer? A lot of us, I know it's so present in our community, but we don't really know. So we're going to tap into a little bit more detail, all of that stuff. I know each one of your websites as well has a donate option, okay? So I want you guys to speak, because we're going to put the donate information here on the screen, but where do these proceeds go? Does it go to research or helping, or let us know what those proceeds go, because there might be someone watching that has that change of heart as well. So letting us know where the proceeds go.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity, Mari. We Love People Not Pixels. We didn't really follow the blueprint for a nonprofit. There was such a need, we just began developing programs. We began looking at the problem and how do we service those that are struggling? How do we equip parents and others that love people who are struggling? And in doing so, we were able to really set some templates out there that are really working. We find ourselves now that when we continue to develop that, donations are necessary. We're 100% donation and grant supported. So for every dollar that goes in, we're very transparent. In fact, on our website, we'll tell you exactly how we break it all up. One thing about doing programs first and then gathering the money later and continuing to go is you can't help but practice good stewardship. You've got to be good with every dollar. And so that's something that I'm grateful for, and it was something that our organization took very seriously. When we do get a donation, we apply that directly to things like young people, giving them an understanding of really what it is to be in a world where they've got 2.5 billion pages of pornography in their pocket at all times. You know, as parents, we were the first generation that ever had to deal with that, right? And I can say as a fact for myself and for others, it was a difficult thing to deal with. So we put a lot of this money into prevention, into programs that are dealing with people that are struggling now, and to shut down illicit brothels, illicit massage places, and help those that are buying to never buy again.
And I know you're wearing a shirt right now representing your organization.
Yeah.
So I want to highly encourage also you guys, I have one too here. It's on the website to get a shirt.
Yes.
Because if you're just walking around with this and someone just asks you, what is that? Then you can also help someone just educating. They might not be a survivor or affected, but just educating so it makes our world a better place.
It's such a great point. Let's see, Dairy Queen, I eat out a lot. Dairy Queen, Whataburger, walking in the mall, I've had people say, so what's that about? I had somebody walk out, start their car, because I saw them, they're kind of looking at us. They start their car, they turn their car off, they come back in, like, okay, what's this about?
Yeah.
Because of that interest. So yeah, that's great, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hilary, let us know as far as the proceeds for your organization and on your website, where did those proceeds go?
Yeah, so proceeds are going to go to our drop-in center to keep those doors open because it provides a place for survivors to come and feel safe and get connected to services. One of the biggest things that we ask and are in need of is justice warriors, and that's what we call our monthly donors. And those are people that are going to come in at, whatever level that is. On our website you can see $15, $25, all the way up to, who knows, if you want to give $1,000 a month. But that ongoing support, that's what really gives survivors the security of, okay, I have a place that I can go and I'm not worried that it's going to disappear tomorrow. So that's really what would help us the most.
Yeah, and I tell you guys all the time on this show, a little bit goes a long way. So whatever you're able to do on with your pocketbook, whether it's $1 or $1,000, this is to help another life that is in need. So I strongly recommend it. Those links are here also in the comment section. Now I kind of want to talk a little bit about the statistics, and you guys know way more statistics than I do. But how common is human trafficking in the United States? It's a deep question.
Yeah, that's a really deep question. Let's see, I know the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Polaris, they put out a report every year, and their report just got released actually, I think a week ago. And so you can go to that website, you can look up those reports, and that shows how many calls are being, ringing into their hotline, and that is true evidence that human trafficking is going on here. But I'll bring it a little bit closer to home. In Texas, there's a study that came out from the University of Texas Social Work School, and it said that an estimated 313,000+ people are victims of human trafficking just in Texas. 313,000 plus. But that actually leaves out the population of adult sex trafficking victims. So that's a very conservative number. So that's huge.
Yeah.
And just to localize that even further, because many Americans, myself included a few years ago, was, yeah, that happened somewhere. We've got to understand it's not happening somewhere, it's happening here.
Right.
If you've got an internet connection, there's trafficking, people are being sold, people are being exploited. And to take that down even further, if we were to zoom in, so if we looked at across the U.S., there's a number of studies that have been done. One of them talks about how 1 in 20 men have bought sex or attempted to buy sex online. 1 in 20. When you zero that in on the Houston area, that number goes to 1 in 5.
Wow.
1 in 5 men. And it's estimated as much as 2,800 men a day are buying sex in illicit massage brothels right here in our city of Houston.
Wow.
2,800 a day.
And you know what, you bring up a good point. There's a lot of top cities, but it's happening all over the United States. I know just a couple, just to name a few, but Houston, Texas, New York, Los Angeles, California, Washington, D.C., we're in Houston. Like you just said, it's in our backyard right now. So it's super important for us to just be aware. It's a very uncomfortable topic, I get it. But the more that we know, the more we can recognize and not be naive to it. I did also look up another statistic saying every 30 seconds a child is sold into sex slavery. We're talking children, adolescents, adults. We're talking all age ranges and all genders. It's not really just one, which it makes the pool a lot bigger as well.
Yeah, and that coupled with the average age of exposure to pornography being 9, it really, it makes me think of a quote from an interview with a pimp that was done, and one of the things he said was, our mantra is get them while they're young. Get them watching while they're young, exploit them while they're young, we can sell them longer. As terrible as that is to say, we've got to understand as parents and as defenders in our own community that these are things that are realities, and not to create a scare tactic. It's really more of understanding and then getting engaged in a way where you can be part of that defense to make sure that we're stopping it.
Yeah, some of these statistics are a little scary. There is a lot. I really encourage for you guys to look in their websites. I know that's on here. But let's take a look at a video with some more statistics here.
In 2018, the United States ranked as one of the worst countries in the world for human trafficking. Houston, New York, and Los Angeles were ranked as the top cities with the most human trafficking activity. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is the business of stealing someone's freedom for profit. Our survivors have been tricked, drugged, assaulted, and manipulated into providing sex or working in awful conditions. D. Miller & Associates, PLLC, is committed to helping survivors who have been exploited by human trafficking. If you or a loved one have been exploited for sex trafficking or human trafficking, please contact us for more information on how we can help.
Awesome. So we just kind of spoke a little bit about the statistics, how eye-opening it is in our community, in our backyard, across cities. It's crazy. It's present all over. Now, I know you guys were kind of mentioning a little bit about the survivor, the buyer. You just mentioned a pimp terminology. Now, for those that are watching and are still a little bit like, what exactly is human trafficking? What's that process look like for those to recognize at a young age or even at the adulthood? We are a little naive to how society has depicted based on TV, media, etc. So what does that process look like?
Can I give you sort of just a look at the cycle and then a comparison? So the cycle, the way we explain it many times in our training is society celebrates pornography. It doesn't just allow it, it celebrates it. We see it throughout our culture, pornified culture, hypersexualized. And pornography is really the best advertisement for human trafficking. It creates what's called demand. Demand requires supply, and sadly, supply is often fulfilled via human trafficking. So as we see this relationship continue to happen, we have to ask ourselves what roles and what parts of that do we play. So if we look at how that is, so let's look at it this way. If we were to describe somebody being sold, somebody selling them, and somebody buying them, what is that? That's slavery. That's human trafficking.
Wow.
And none of us would agree that that's acceptable. But if we just add one more person to that equation, a photographer, well, now we just call it an art form. We say it's protected under the First Amendment. That's what pornography is. People essentially being sold exponentially more than they would if it was that terrible 1-to-1 ratio. And it creates such demand. The thing we ask our audience many times when we're presenting is, how much did you pay for your last Google search? And their answer is, of course, nothing. What is one of the most powerful and affluent businesses on earth? Google. Why? Because they can say to somebody that would be an advertiser or give them money, we have X billions of users. Pornography is the same way, the same model. There are 12 common factors to that, as well as this online empire that we call Google and others. And again, I'm not implementing, saying that Google is, I'm saying that that model is effective in this, and it creates that cycle of demand and the requirement of supply.
So I know you kind of plugged in pornography being into this human trafficking equation.
Yeah.
So why don't they just take it off?
Yeah.
I know that's another deep question,
that might be a whole other show.
Yeah, it's a stemming problem right there. What are your thoughts about it?
I can tell you that I'm as Texas as it gets. I was born in Texas City. I have a great deal of pride in our state. Texas still has not declared porn as a public health crisis. 15 other states have. So I say that to answer the question in this way. The one way to stop an epidemic, the first step is to agree we have one. We have not gotten to that point in our state and really in our nation. We also haven't looked at this beyond personal liberties. Because the fact of the matter is, we're not the sex police, and just like if you go and buy a pack of cigarettes, it tells you what you're risking on that cigarette pack. If you buy alcohol, it tells you what you're risking on that bottle of alcohol. In fact, energy drinks have a disclaimer on them. But when a 9-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 25-year-old clicks on free porn, they don't realize that there are 40 psychological, emotional, physical consequences that they are taking on. And it's documented. And I talk to men all the time. And it becomes this really, I've never talked to a sex buyer that was not struggling with pornography, because the fact of the matter is it does create demand. So there's that relationship that we don't talk about very much.
Yeah, that's a loaded question that I gave you. And so I just want to recap. So there is a person that owns someone. In your terminology, you call that like a pimp. Is that correct?
Yeah, the pimp is someone who is controlling through force, fraud, or coercion somebody else and prostituting them, selling them just like they're a product.
Okay, and then the prostituting, or what we are calling a survivor, is that next tier down.
Sure.
And then there's buyers that are needing the service or getting the service per se. I don't like to say it like that, but that's what we're looking at, what this process looks like. Now, I know we kind of said prostitute, but I like to say survivor. What does a prostitute look like? What we see in the movies, is that really what they look like?
So, like, you might hear stories of human trafficking victims. Like maybe you've seen a movie about someone being kidnapped, stolen, taken away. Yeah, Liam Neeson taken the movie, transported, and now they're being thrown into an area and sold, forced to sleep with other people, forced prostitution. It's not even sleeping with; it's forced prostitution. And yes, that does happen. I will say that. Survivors do look like the women that are walking the street and maybe wearing scandalous clothes. Yes, that is a survivor in a sense. But it also looks like that 5-year-old child who her mom decided to sell her to someone for drugs. It looks like the little girl or little boy whose uncle is going to exploit him or her in their home, or it can look all different. It crosses all racial or ethnic lines. It crosses all socio-economic lines. There's no one defining factor except that there is some kind of vulnerability that has been exploited. And we all have vulnerabilities. We all do. And it's not our fault, and it's not something that necessarily we can change, but it's recognizing those vulnerabilities, finding the strength, whether it's within ourselves or around us, and trying to determine a way that vulnerability will not be taken advantage of, will not be exploited. And so that's what we see as a survivor, really. It can be anyone or it can be everyone, but it's just where a vulnerability has been taken advantage of.
See, in my perception, and a lot of you viewers may agree with how I'm looking at it, I was thinking it was a kidnapping being involved, okay, and maybe handcuffed and then selling the body. But you mentioned could even be your loved ones.
Absolutely.
That is appalling to me, that it could be a mother, an uncle, even a friend that you love, you feel connected, you trust this person, and you're like, okay. So I kind of want to talk about some examples of how individuals are manipulated into this situation. I mean, could it be as simple as what I'm thinking of kidnapping, an advertisement, or even at home?
Yeah.
Yes to all the above.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's a study out of the Covenant House, the main branch in New York, that said that 36% of traffickers are actually immediate family members, and that's followed by boyfriends or loved ones and that romantic partners as a second. So most traffickers rely on a trust-built relationship before exploitation occurs. So they really want to get into someone's life, build that trust, and separate them from any other community that they could reach out to before then starting to manipulate and exploit.
Yeah, and it's so important, just to follow up on that, is to, this seems like it, like I said, it happens to someone somewhere. Okay, now we've brought it to the U.S. Let's bring it into our homes. Because not only can it sometimes be a family member, but oftentimes people are being groomed. There's a term called grooming, and if you're not familiar with it, and if you're a parent or if you have kids in your life, I want you to pay close attention to this. Grooming is whenever somebody is brought along under false pretenses, a false friendship, maybe some sort of false affection, whether it's a boyfriend or another friend at school, and a relationship is begun. And this relationship is begun with the full intent to exploit that person at some point. Now that sounds like kind of, well, how often would that really work? I can tell you that is a common practice in our middle schools, in our schools, in our churches, at the mall. And with social media and location-based services and things of that nature, it's so much easier to make it, oh man, look at that, you guys are a block away from us. I want to introduce you to my boyfriend. Or, hey, we got this great party, why don't you come? And at that party, they're somehow inebriated, pictures are taken, they're exploited. So if you're not familiar with grooming, we can really dig in, but I think that there are a number of resources that you can look at online. You can go to a number of the websites, and that is something that parents need to understand and bring it right inside your home, because on many levels, it's happening, and even your kid doesn't realize that they're being groomed for human trafficking.
So you guys are bringing up 2 points that I kind of want to talk about. So it could be a loved one, like a boyfriend, a spouse, or something, right? And that intention, it could be from drugs or money on why they want to even groom someone to do that. And then the other side of the survivor, having that love connection. I love him, I love her, whatever the case may be. How do we help those people that are in love to recognize that there is a problem? Because when there's love in there, you're so naive. I don't know if you guys been in there, or you guys, but that's where you're just kind of blinded. And that almost sounds more difficult to get them out and have them recognize that there is a problem.
Yeah, most definitely. We get the question all the time. I see her walking the street. If she wanted to leave, why couldn't she just leave and run away and get services? And yes, you're right, there's not physical chains or physical things that may be keeping her there, but it's the chains that you don't see, those psychological, those emotional, those mental, or the blackmail that is keeping her or him in that place. Yeah. And so one thing that we do at our drop-in center is when someone comes in, and if they're ready and willing, we teach a course called Ending the Game. And it's a 10-week curriculum that goes over levels of detachment from their traffickers. So really trying to break it down, like what happened and maybe why did that happen and who did this happen from, and all those little pieces, and trying to let them connect the dots themselves. Because like you said, if we're just coming in and saying the person that you love is this horrible, awful person, then their ears are going to close and they're not going to trust us anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate process, absolutely.
And have you guys had people, like maybe there may be a viewer and saying, oh, is that me? Is it not me? Like, do you guys have people just questioning and they don't know how to recognize and helping them? It might not be anything, but do you guys have people also seeking for help that might be in that situation?
Yes, absolutely. So people that are questioning, is this, am I, all those are welcome at our center. You can actually go to our website, and there's like a client referral form, and you can just put in there some information, maybe some questions that you have. We would love to reach out to you and help you walk through this process of how you can get help, or how you can just become educated yourself or the people around you.
And really, if we step back and look at a bigger picture, just the word love itself, there's a reason our shirt says defend love, because that word has become hijacked. It's become conditional. If you're in high school, even middle school, their National Center on Sexual Exploitation just sent an article out about this HBO series that focuses on the lives of teenagers. And one of the quotes they have in there is that nudes have become the currency of love. You see, what that says specifically is, love to me is, will you send me a picture of yourself naked? I forget the statistic, you might remember it. It is an alarmingly high number of high school girls have been asked to send nudes because they feel like it's a condition of affection, of being accepted, of, okay, I like this guy, and it's no big deal. The more we allow that word to be hijacked and redefined, the less we're investing in what it really means to be loved. So defend love is one of the reasons we have that on most of our shirts and our website, is because we've got to get back to, if somebody bases their affection on you based on what you'll do for them, how it makes them look better, what you look like, and do that in a way where that's your sum total value, that's a red flag from the beginning that this is not something that I need to pursue. And as obvious as that sounds, with social media, with the conditions of relationships these days, swipe right, whatever it is, we have got to start to take ownership of that word and do it in a way that empowers people to make choices that are healthy.
Yeah, and you know what? You're bringing up a lot of great points. I feel like it also, starting with the parents, educating your children of, first of all, nude pictures under 18 is another door we're opening, okay? Educating on all these apps that are out there. There's good, bad, and disguised, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the effects of social media. Sex sells, right? And now that we have it on our phones and everyone carries their phone, it's attached at their hip, now they have it at their fingertips. Kids starting at age 3 have iPads.
Yeah.
It's crazy how young that this can really start, and I feel like parents need to start putting, or probably already do, parameters, education, recognizing certain things. You just mentioned, Joe, red flags. That was my next question for you.
Yeah.
Any warnings, and for both of you guys, someone that is watching should look out for any red flags, or if they're encountered in this situation, they need to get out.
Yeah.
How do they protect themselves? Like, what do you guys recommend in those situations?
I can say that we cover a lot of this. So we've got this introduction presentation called Porn and Parenting. It talks directly to the heart of what it is to be a parent in a hypersexualized culture. And then we have a follow-up, a 2.5, 3-hour training called Defend Home. And it is about treating, like, you wouldn't hand your 7-year-old the keys to the car. They're not ready. They haven't been trained. They don't fully understand the dangers that they are agreeing to accept if they can start a car and steer a wheel. But we hand smartphones, a gateway to anything and everything, to every one of our kids. And again, part of it is this transition from 1991, 1992, I was 18 years old. Yes, I'm old. I get it. I know. Let's move on. That was a dawn of the internet. Like, there should have been a big drum behind me. That's the dawn of the internet and dial-up. But around 1995, we started seeing high-speed internet, and that changed the game. And as parents at that age, I had a 1-year-old in 1995. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready as a man to have that in my pocket and show the discipline that I needed. How am I going to? So we're in this transition period where we can get that back. But it comes back to understanding what a threat is and how people can see, okay, my value to this person is whether or not I'll send them a nude. Or they want to introduce me to somebody that they know and I friend them. We have to have those red flag conversations, and we do it in our training, but as parents we can have it. Meet their friends. Social media is, there have been so many of these studies where people will actually get in a van with somebody they met online and have never met in person because, hey, my parents are gone. Hey, if your parents are gone, let's go out. I'll buy you a drink, treat you like an adult. You know, things like that. And they'll get in a van, and that van has a camera crew and somebody saying, you've never met this person, but you got in a van with them. Why? Well, they're my friend. That's another word we got to get back. Friend. What does that mean? Social media existence is not a trust-based relationship.
Yeah, social media. I was going to save that for later, but I kind of want to get into that
Sorry.
now. Like,
It's all connected, so I just jump
yeah,
around.
it is connected. It's crazy. Instagram, Facebook. I know we're on all platforms. YouTube. People have channels. Like, it is now so easy to give that. Not just that, nudity. Partial nudity. It's crazy. Those pictures, here's how deep it can go. You don't know where those pictures are going. You think it's going to a friend, it's really not going to a friend.
Yeah,
you
that's
think
right.
they're your friends because you have Instagram friends, but that's not real. Do you really know their favorite color? Probably the answer is no.
Yeah.
So the effects of social media is so present. How is it present on the human trafficking, and how can we recognize, like in our news feed, oh my gosh, this might not be okay. Should we report it? Should we ask for help? Like, what do we do as even those things that we see in our timeline?
Before you answer that, because I know you got a great answer, you touched on so many great things. I would add one other thing. If you ask a room full of parents, and I've done this, raise your hand if your kid's a felon, right? That's not a great icebreaker. I don't recommend it. But no one raised their hand. Then I ask if this percentage of people who have received or sent nudes and they're under 18 years old, that's trafficking child pornography. And people don't realize that. And we've seen real lives destroyed and damaged, and these plea deals that a 15-year-old never thought. He's asking for a nude from a girl who's under 18 years old. He receives that picture, he sends it to his friend. You just circulated child
Wow.
pornography. It's a level that we've gotten to that we don't truly understand the risk involved. And so that is just one other thing I wanted to add to some of the great points that you made.
Sure, yeah. So back to social media, and so maybe you're seeing pictures of girls or boys in scandalous clothes, wads of cash, or drugs, or going to parties. Anything like that could be red flags that you might see on social media, and especially if you yourself are being talked to in private with someone, and they want, just over time, they're asking deeper and deeper questions about you. They want to meet up with you. Anything like that could be a red flag, definitely, of trafficking, that grooming process that Joe mentioned of what's occurring. And so I would definitely say, find someone that you trust and talk to them about it, whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend that you really know their favorite color, and just talk to them, a teacher, a counselor at the school, get their opinion on it. And that way, if you get into a situation where you've gone too far, or you've gotten that nude, or you don't know what to do, maybe you have someone you trust that you can talk through that with, instead of feeling like you're all alone, because that's exactly what the trafficker wants. You to feel alone and isolated, and then I can't do anything except what they tell me to do.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned a great point, Joe. You were just saying, someone sends a nude, you send it to your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, luckily, our phones are able to now do group messages.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people that may also upload a group message with almost 50. Group me's another one that has 100 plus. Innocently, they think, let me just load it up. This is funny. Oh, look at the girl that sent me this picture. And look at the harm and what you're involving yourself into. It's deeper than that. So if we have any viewers that have condoned in that, we really want to invite you guys to double think about it, and before sending that, because you might be condoning in a crime to that person without their consent as well. And if it's a minor, it's even worse.
That's right.
Do you have a comment in the group messaging and the group me's or anything?
As soon as you send that, you might as well have sent your written consent to say exploit me. We have to look at it in those terms. If I send somebody a picture of my big old head, right, and they want to post it somewhere else, fine. But in schools, this is such a... There are boys who says, yeah, I'll send 30 or 40 nude requests. Somebody's going to say yes. And when he gets that picture, you've given consent to be exploited. And we don't think of it in those terms. No, he's my friend. Yeah, but he's sharing it with somebody you've never met. Somebody that will now upload your site, maybe your picture, to one of their sites that exploits people. So we give our consent in a way that we don't realize, and so we have to take the seriousness back of that and understand what we're truly doing.
And even on the high school level, I haven't had this when I was in high school, but they have forums where the cyberbullying happens, but also they also load some of these pictures there too, and that's also engaging in that. I kind of want to switch over to a little bit of the terminology that you were saying a little earlier, a defender. So what is a defender, and how can someone become one?
So the term volunteer is very common. Think of a defender as a volunteer.
Okay.
But what we do is we take somebody who is interested in being equipped to make a difference in the life of a loved one, somebody else that might be struggling, their own child. Some of our greatest defenders are parents that say, my parents did a great job raising me. Mine did. They were incredible. If I took their almost perfect way of doing it, dealing with this thing they had to deal with, if I take that and use it with my kids, I'm doing my kids a disservice. Because again, they didn't have to deal with that smartphone. They didn't have to deal with the internet in a way that we do. So some of our defenders are parents that we equip to have real conversations with their kids. Other defenders are people that will walk side by somebody that's struggling, whether they're a sex buyer or somebody that pornography is kind of taking over their life. Other defenders are people that want to get involved in local advocacy. You see, we've developed programs that will allow us to, on a local level, identify these IMBs, illicit massage brothels, businesses, massage places, and start to do work from a safe distance that gets them the attention they don't want. These places want to work in the shadows. We equip defenders to work with their local city government to just change ordinances. I call myself the accidental advocate because I never thought I'd be a guy going in front of city council, but with some awesome people in Pearland, we took the lead in Brazoria County, and we went in and changed ordinances. Our city council, our planning and zoning committee, incredible people there. The people that are on our page Stop, which is a Facebook page where a lot of our community comes together and learns about human trafficking in Pearland and around the city. We stepped up and said, there are things we can do better, and our city council passed verbiage to do that. And that was just me acting as a defender. It wasn't even LPMP. It was just things that I learned by learning how to defend in my own community.
So if anybody that is watching now wants a little bit more information on how to be a defender, I suggest that you guys go to the website as well as Stop. Stop is on Facebook, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And in sex trafficking opposition of Pearland. Is that correct? Okay, awesome. So that's actually on the screen right now so that you guys can see. I encourage you guys to look at that as well. Very educational. And so that way we can also educate more.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
Everything that we do with Love People Not Pixels is designed to be replicated. We don't want to be the one that comes in and does a training every time. We want to empower that youth pastor at church, or that leader of that men's group, or that group of friends or PTA. We want to empower them to then continue that cycle when we're gone so that people can share that. Stop is one of those examples. Again, that's not an LPMP thing. That's just me as a defender creating a Facebook page and having an awesome community say, yes, I want to know more about that. And this community has stepped up so many times. That is completely, it's so simple to replicate. Whether you're in LaPorte, you're in Sugar Land, you can start one of these pages, you can connect to some of your local pages and create that awareness. And that is being a defender in every sense of the word.
Yeah, let me tell you right now the magnitude and the power of having a voice on a social media platform. So I get why you started Stop. Because everyone kind of relies on social media. They go YouTube it, they go Google it. So if we can educate and help out, I know now the face-to-face does work, the seminars do work that you guys still do, but I know the platform and having a voice there is
Absolutely.
Even more magnified. So Joe, when you say y'all fight demand, what does that actually mean?
Let's see. So we talked about Houston being, sadly, in many ways, the #1 city for sexual exploitation and trafficking. There are a number of reasons for that. One of them is disposable income. One is a male-dominant population in the workforce, in medical, and oil and gas, and that sort of thing. When we talk about demand, we're going back to that demand for sex buying. We're talking about people that, if they weren't buying, nobody would be selling. And so we know that our way of facing a problem where people say men are the problem. Well, we believe men can be the solution. We believe that that is something at the core of becoming a defender, working with somebody, having real conversations about sex and sexuality and what really happens in our lives. And the funny thing is, we'll have these defender trainings to talk about this, and it's not just men that show up. It's usually almost 50-50 every time. We have women there, moms that want to get better and understand these things. People that want to understand demand on a level where they see it as, okay, this is something we can impact. This is something that we can stop. Because if we don't stop demand, we'll continue to have hurt people who are being hurt by others. So we bring that focus in the city of Houston. We cannot wait until we say we're not the only ones that are focusing on this full time, but as it is now, we are. That's why the donations are so important, because we get to partner with incredible organizations. I mean, across the board. If you do nothing else from this podcast, please like The Landing. Please like Rescue Houston. Please like, just right on that, just Free the Captives, Elijah Rising, Love People Not Pixels. Like them, because what that does is this. It takes an awareness that's hard to come by, and it brings it to you. And sometimes there are victories. We shared an incredible story from Elijah Rising on Stop locally, and we shared it on Love People Not Pixels. We've created this collaboration within Houston that focuses on the whole picture, which includes demand. But we've done it in a way that we realize not one of us owns the solution. We all do.
Yeah. And I know parents, again, I know in the past sex talk would be so quick. Yeah. Now I feel like,
that's over with.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
Finally. But I feel like it's so necessary to almost do like a week course in how the magnitude of the social media, sex on social media, actual sex, the psychological. There's just so much that you just talked about. It's crazy. And Hilary, I want to ask you, I know we're talking about the fighting the demand, but then there's also a survivor, okay? A lot of us might think, again, here we go to the movies, what a survivor looks like. Oh my gosh, they're into drugs. Oh my gosh, they look like this. And that's not necessarily true. What does a survivor that you see day in and day out look like?
Yeah, sure. So we see it all. We see literally probably any scenario you could think of, we've seen it or we've had some kind of connection to it. And so, we have about 15 individuals that on average are coming in every single day to our facility, and that's a mixture of new people who've never walked in before, a mixture of people who have been with us for 2 years, and all in between. And so we see young individuals who come in and maybe they're right on that cusp of they're not a minor anymore, but they were trafficked, they were exploited when they were a minor, but now maybe the services that they can get, or they're not considered a minor being trafficked, and so it's harder sometimes. And so they're coming in and they want counseling, they want a family to connect with, they want classes and to finish their GED. And then we see the opposite end of the spectrum. We see individuals who are maybe in their 50s or 60s, and they were exploited when they were young, and they have been in this life just trying to survive for their entire life. Because once you've been exploited, and for example, I can think of a scenario where an individual who was exploited when she was very, very young, caught a bunch of different cases, and now has a criminal background, 3 felony charges.
Wow.
And once that's on your record, you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job, you can't, all the day-to-day things that maybe you and I take for granted, she can't do. So what are her choices? And how does she navigate all those systems and live a life with all of that still hanging on as baggage? And so those are some of the things that we see every single day, and are trying to help walk individuals along their path, their journey, and to get them to where they want to be. Empower them, not say this is the program you've got to go through, these are the check boxes you've got to do, but meet them and say, hey, who are you? What do you want to accomplish in your life, and how can we help you get there?
Yeah, that's pretty deep. And Hilary, about how many individuals do you see like on a weekly base come to the landing to get, if you had to put an average amount of
Sure, yeah, so we see 15 a day. So 15
Wow.
times 5, that's what we're seeing every single week. We are over 3 years old, and we are about to hit our 500th individual coming into our center, like
Wow.
Ever seen. So 500 people in 3 years that we've seen at the landing. And can I tell a quick story? Really fast?
Absolutely,
So
yes.
I've got a story to share. So we have a survivor that we met not too long ago. So she grew up right here in Houston, and right around the area in Southwest Houston. Small apartment, single mom, and when she was 13 years old, her mom, who was very heavily addicted to cocaine, just got to that point of desperation. You also have to look at the stories behind every single person in this. The buyer, the pimp, the trafficker, the survivor. And so she was in such desperation that she decided one day to sell her daughter to men to get those drugs. And so this started at 13 years old, continued until she was 21. And at 21, that's when she said, that's it, I've had enough. So she leaves, but she didn't have her high school diploma. She didn't have any kind of education. She didn't have a support system. So she leaves and actually decides to stay at a friend's house, a guy that growing up she had known, her family had known. He'd actually helped them out sometimes financially. And so goes to stay with him, and he said, I'll take care of you for a while and get you on your feet. And then began that romantic relationship with him, and thought he was going to be the one to take care of her. And then over time he started saying, hey, I just need a little bit of rent help. We're going to make it, but can you just go out and do this for me once? And having done that before in her life, it wasn't something new or strange. She thought, I'll help you out, I love you, I want us to make it. So started doing that for him, and over time it just became the same exact thing that she had experienced with her mother. And so these are the kind of things we're seeing. She had nowhere to go. She had no one to reach out to. We met her on a street outreach one day, gave her a card. Over time, just built a relationship with her. One day she decided, her bravery, her courage, to walk into our facility and just start from ground one, counseling, classes, GED. What does that look like? And so now she's been at a shelter for a while, trying to save up money, got a job, and trying to save up money. The journey's not over. It's not perfect. She's been through a lot, and the ups and downs still keep coming. But that's what it looks like, probably day to day. It's not the pretty in it and then out of it.
Right.
But it's the long journeys.
And at least she's starting in the right direction, which is something to be very proud of for that survivor. Now, I know we're almost running out of time, but I'm going to extend the show. We're almost done to like the meat of all of this. So I want to ask, what are some other ways or examples of human trafficking? It's not just an individual basis. It also comes in a group format. So what other types or examples do you guys see?
So, for example, we have seen survivors that have been involved in cantina trafficking. So in the city of Houston, we have a large amount of cantinas in our city. And so what it looked like for her, for example, is she was brought here from another country, actually, and she got involved in this cantina. She would work every night, and a man would come in, or even a woman perhaps, but a man would come in usually and buy a beer, and then his ticket would be for $300 instead of like a $10, $15 beer charge. And that meant that he not only got that beer, but he also got that girl. And so then they would go to the back, and she would be forced to perform sexual acts with him. And that was her situation of what her day in and day out looked like.
And these women they can drink as many as 25 beers a night, and every beer represents a man. And these places, these cantinas, so when we say cantina, when I hear cantina, I want fajitas, right? We're going to Pop
Yeah, I think of a bar.
But I can tell you that this is far from that. So this is when we talk about different parts of the human trafficking trade. We say brothel, or we say illicit massage business. That's typically Asian people being exploited, Asian women being exploited. When we say cantinas, that's typically Latin Americans that are being exploited. And then there's even a domestic trade, if you will, people that were born here in this country. So, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So when you say, like, let's just say I were to go to a cantina and, it has Latin music. Yes, it's like a bar.
Yeah.
How can I recognize that is happening? That's crazy because I had no idea.
Yeah, if you walk in, let's say you walked into a cantina and it was a legitimate place, you would see some interaction, you'd see some people. If you go into one that's not legitimate, many times the girls are going to be lined up on the wall, the waitresses, the cantineras, which just means a cantina waitress, right? That's what that means. It's supposed to mean. Many times they're just kind of lined up, waiting for men to sit down at the bar. You'll know because the conversations, when you ask, the words you use, you will not feel like a patron. You will not feel like a customer as you would if you went to a regular bar. Many times these places have no one parked in the front. They're just this ramshackled, run-down building that you would not think anybody would walk into, much less consume a beverage or eat anything inside of. And many of the cars are out back. That's because these places are absolutely illicit in nature. Some of them that get shut down, they literally have back doors that people just climb out of and run whenever the sting operation, the vice squad comes in. So these are organized crime places. This isn't somebody that decided, I'll exploit these girls because they're already in the life and they're fine with it. These are places that are organized crime, that are multiple places many times. Some of them, it's not uncommon to have a legitimate business connected to them, a dry cleaner or something that would launder their money. And one of the same owners or ownership groups, that money then gets laundered. So it's important to really understand what's happening in our city. There are nearly 450 suspected illicit massage businesses. That's the Asian part of it, in Houston alone, the greater Houston area alone. 450, and that's not counting the cantinas, that's not counting the online people being sold. So there's a huge population that we need to understand.
Here's what's crazy to me is that what you just mentioned. Let's just stay in cantina because then I'm going to switch it over to the massage parlor. There's an etiquette that someone spoke to someone about. They know to park in the back. They know what to do to come in. I wouldn't be able to recognize that. There's a whole nother lingo. That's what's scary. So is that being taught to where when they go, they kind of know, oh, park in the back, oh, do this?
I can tell you a good example, and this is straight from the script of the Elijah Rising van tour. So if you really want some awareness, Elijah Rising has a van tour that you can sign up for. And when you register for that, it is an in-van experience. We're pulling up in front of brothels and we're telling what's going on inside. We're reading actual reviews of men that have used them. So to answer that question, if you walked in, you would sort of feel like, let's say you walked into one of these brothels, as IMBs, and you walked in, many times there's some telltale signs, things that you would know. Blacked out windows, buzzer controlled doors, cash only policy, ways where when you go in, or if you call ahead, a woman, they'll say they're busy, they don't have any availability. If a man calls, yes sir, we can come in right now, we've got girls. And so there is this vernacular, there's this way to be identified as a patron that's looking for a certain thing. And when you walk in one of these brothels, the mama-san or the female pimp will have you come in. You'll select the person that you want to do your massage. You're basically selecting your product. At that point, you may be instructed to go in the back and disrobe or take a shower and disrobe. Many times they do that because they want to make sure that undercover police officers are not in there with a wire or what have you. So there are all of these things, this cat and mouse game where they fully understand what they're doing. And in doing so, they start to shape their clientele to behave a certain way when they come in.
Wow, this is extremely scary. I know you just mentioned cantinas, but you also, within your conversation, also said massage parlors.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Asian community.
Mm-hmm.
I've also been to massage parlors, those that are, you have the monthly membership, those that don't.
Sure.
I don't know how to recognize any of these etiquettes, but what does that look like? Now I feel like we need to bring awareness to every type of group, brothel setting. Like, this is crazy.
It can feel overwhelming. It can. And if you feel that way right now, that's okay. Let me give you some simple ways that you can start to bring that back in. And if you have a question about a place, there are things you can do. I was on a press conference with Commander Dale of the Houston Vice Squad. And let me tell you how committed this Vice Squad is. He said on camera, if you suspect a place, call the Vice Division, HPD. They're overworked, they are stretched, and they do an incredible job for the city of Houston, soon to be the third largest city in America. But here he is saying, if you're not sure, call in. So what I did is my church, I went and did a presentation, and I had a call about a week later from somebody in church saying, Joe, I think I'm at a brothel. This is a churchgoer, a friend of mine.
Oh,
Joe, I think I'm at a brothel. And it was awesome because she was next door, and while she's waiting for her husband to come out, she looks at this sign. It says $25 reflexology, a massage. She's like, that's pretty cheap. We can afford that. So she calls to see if they have to set an appointment. And they told her there's no availability. She can see in the business. They don't know that she's outside in her car. She's like, oh, we're packed, we're full, there's no availability. Why?
Oh my gosh.
She's a woman. But when she said, oh, I'm outside, I can see that there's nobody in there. Are you closed? Oh, no, oh, okay, yeah, you can come in. And so this place was operating like that. And the reason they realized that is they called me. I looked up the name. The Children at Risk is an incredible organization that we haven't mentioned yet. And they're fighting on behalf of not just children, but the exploited. They work on behalf of those that maybe don't have a voice. And one of the things that they developed is this online tool. If you go to Children at Risk, if you Google Children at Risk and map, that map is an interactive map that tells you how close one of these illicit massage businesses are to a school. That's the primary purpose of this map. But the other thing it does is if you're not sure, well, you can go on, you can take the name of that place, many times it'll be Blue Orchid or something like that. Take that place, search it on that map, the proximity, and it'll tell you that there are these locations. Now, the map, it's impossible because these places move so much to keep it updated. They'd have to do it every 5 hours a day and work on it. But it really is a good fundamental tool to help understand, is there something close to my school I need to know about? And if there is, there's something you can do. We're working on a project called How to Shut Down a Brothel. This is a project that's going to have steps that empower local citizens to never walk in an unsafe environment, never go inside of a brothel, but use your own resources, things that we provide you with, step-by-step program, to start shutting these places down. You see, they don't want attention, and you can bring attention to them by following certain steps. You can work with your city government. If you don't know how to do that, email us at defender@lpnp.org. Hey, I'm not sure what to do, but I want to do something. Send an email to that inbox. We'll route you on how to become a defender, how to get involved, and we'll give you those steps on exactly how to begin to protect your community. But there's resources out there that can help you know, am I in an illicit brothel? Is this a place I shouldn't be?
Wow, this is just a lot of information, which is great information for those of us that are hearing this for the first time. And Hilary, I'm going to ask you, do you guys have the supported staff to also support some of these brothel survivors? The Latin women, the Asian community,
Right.
like any interpreters?
So we at our organization, we have people that can speak Spanish, and so we do serve those that are Spanish speakers as well. But as far as anyone who doesn't speak English and needs really good services, we will use a translation line to talk with them as much as possible. And then if we are not the appropriate organization that's going to give them the best service, we'll connect them to a partner. Like Joe said, we're all in this together, and so we want them to get the best service that they can get. So if that's hooking them up to the YMCA or Catholic Charities or someone else that's better suited to fit their needs and the language that they speak, we're going to do that, because this is a game where we're all together in it, fighting it as one. So we will connect with them, and then we will hand them off in a soft handoff if that's what's needed.
Okay, and then I want to kind of mention a couple more things. So we were talking about Brothels Cantina. This is happening in Houston, in probably your backyard. I know we're reaching out this program to not just Houston, Texas, not just Texas, but other cities. So there may be other organizations that may help in your community, but I still strongly recommend you reach out to Joe or Hilary, and they'll give you a warm transfer to an organization near you. I do want to touch base on if someone has information, I know you kind of mentioned this, or a tip about a brothel or anything related to human trafficking, who do they give this information to?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So if you think something may be going on, you can reach out to one of the, we call ourselves NGOs, nonprofits, one of the organizations I mentioned earlier. You can reach out directly to the Vice Squad. Now, if you do that, you want to make sure you have some actionable intel, some reasons why you're calling, what you observed, license plate numbers. We never encourage people to do this in an unsafe manner. So if this is information that you have gathered, do so in a safe manner. Use your best judgment, but more than anything, realize that you are empowered in your own community. You can make a difference by understanding the threats that exist, the things that don't quite look right, and how you can act on those things. And one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier, we were talking about how big this is and how much it is to understand. We talked about trainings. Well, not everyone can go to a training. Each of our websites have a resource page, like Love People, Not Pixels, lpnp.org has these videos, and those videos will give you an idea of what porn does to the brain, what it looks like to be possibly groomed, or what this type of life looks like. We've got some incredible partners like The Landing and others. You go to their website, these resources are invaluable, and you can begin to understand more about what this looks like even before you go to a training.
Yeah, it looks like it's not just two parties involved, it's black and white, like there's so many components to this. Human trafficking, I feel like it's so loaded. It's not just again A and B and that's it. Like, we just kind of talked about a lot of scenarios. There may be more that we didn't have time to touch. I do want to ask you guys, if you had to leave our viewers with anything, one last thing, whether it's a quote, a words of advice, or lead them into a certain direction, what would you tell them? Joe and Hilary, both.
Yeah, sure, I'll start. So I would just say that, first of all, thank you guys for tuning in and listening. I mean, this is a first step. And as you leave today, just recognize and remember that you make a difference with every word you speak, with every action that you take. And while we can't, as ourselves or as our organization, tackle this whole thing alone, but you can play a part just within your organization, within your community, within your family. And if you'll just start there to educate yourself and then look at what can I do around me, right in my circle of influence. That's where it starts. And if we'll all do that, then we'll make the huge change on a bigger global scale. But it starts with just us and what's right around us.
Absolutely. Well said. You know, I think the beginning of my involvement in fighting human trafficking was a quote that I saw at the end of a video. And it's from William Wilberforce. He was very early on an abolitionist fighting slavery in Britain. And he said, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say you did not know." That haunted me for 3 days. It just kept tapping me on the shoulder. It said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" I call that the burden of awareness. I call on everyone who's watching to accept that burden. Just the awareness that it takes to know that this is happening. And that awareness is enough to begin change. There is no action without awareness. If you're willing to take on that burden of awareness, then there are organizations, there are ways to volunteer. There are ways that you can absolutely make a difference in your own life and change the legacy of your kids. Let them see you volunteer. Bring them in to the volunteering. If their school does not address this, talk to them about that. If your church hasn't, we have some incredible missional churches in our area. Just the Freedom Church Alliance is this collection of churches that have said, we will fight trafficking, we'll step up. And the Freedom Church Alliance has been an incredible, powerful force. And we go in and we talk to churches. And what that does is it starts, you can't change America, the world, you can't change Texas, you can't change Houston. You change your conversations at your dinner table, you change your conversations in your community, as Hilary said, you change your conversations in your churches. And that begins a ripple effect that gets replicated, and that changes on a larger scale.
That is great advice that both of you guys gave to our viewers. I want to say, parents, viewers, loved ones, please educate yourselves, because like you guys said, it starts with you guys. We can help someone that's in need. The unknown is what hurts us. Is you don't know, you keep living with life. So I definitely agree that we have so many resources just on this show. So I strongly encourage that you guys go in the comment section, go look at both websites. There's even more websites that we put on there, whether it's social media, whether it's the Defender website that Joe just mentioned. We will put all of those on there so that you guys have already a good little dictionary of resources right there. I want to thank every single one of you guys for watching the show, liking the show, but I highly encourage that you guys share the show. The more you share, the more lives we get to affect, the more lives we get to educate, and the more lives that we get to help. So I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. We're probably going to do a part 2 because we ran out of time. So be ready. In the part 2, we might have an actual attorney here representing for some of the clients that we have faced, and that will also enlighten you guys on the legal side of things. So again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Talk to Me Tuesday. I'm your host, Mari B.
Thank you.